Kim Jong-un is now capable of nuking all of the West Coast. The point is, we're talking about nuclear nations at war with each other.
Why are you telling us all this information?
We're telling you this because you two lucky gentlemen are going to be in a room alone with him. Congratulations, by the way.
That's right!
The CIA would love it if you two could take him out.
In real life, the Koreans were not laughing. Now, I have to say, I myself was not laughing hysterically through this movie either. And I also believe that if it didn't have all this hype, it probably would have gotten very mediocre reviews.
I completely agree. Actually, some critics did see it, and it already has pretty mediocre reviews. I thought it started off with a lot of promise, and I think it was tackling some very interesting issues regarding journalism.
Yes, it was.
Because it's centering on a nightly talk show that is very sensationalist. Early on, we see an interview with Eminem, high point of the film, where it's getting a lot of views and things like that. And then, of course, Seth Rogen, who's the producer of the series, he wants to venture into more compelling journalism. More relevant journalism.
The tabloid journalism.
Yeah, and I thought all of that was very interesting. Again, applying to today very well. And then it just falls apart.
Well, you know, the thing is about it, I think that it was a joke. It's sort of almost like a skit, like a Saturday Night Live skit, where it's a joke, okay? They're going to go, they hire these two nincompoops to kill Kim Jong-un, and then you find out Kim Jong-un is really not who you thought he was. He's got daddy issues and whatnot. But, you know,
Katy Perry.
Ultimately, like you said, it started to just lose steam over time. And the jokes and whatnot kind of reminded me why I'm not necessarily a fan of Seth Rogen and James Franco.
And once it was banned, though, didn't you feel, privileged to have seen it? Like, I never thought I'd feel so privileged to exercise my constitutional right to see a film where Seth Rogen smuggles something up his butt.
Now, let me ask you, Julian. Now, you believe that they're going to eventually release this, and then you think it'll make more money than it ever would have.
They will be printing money. I mean, basically, they had to scrap it from the Christmas Day release because it might have interfered with other films, and God forbid there was an actual incident from the
I agree with you 100%.
The hackers' threats. But they'll release it on demand. They'll make tons of money for it, and you're right on the money. They did more for that film than it would have ever done at the box office. So
it's literally
there will
the
biggest
movie
more
story of the year.
people will now see it. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So really, they are just leading to more people seeing it.
It's leading to more people. And I think it's one of those movies that if people, people want to see what is all the hubbub about. People who would never paid attention to this movie, I think will now.
When something's censored from you, you want to see it.
Well, you've hit it. I think a lot of people don't like the idea of North Korea censoring American audiences to see a film. And so just for spite, they'll be like, we'll check it out for kicks and giggles.
But let's be fair. If the North Koreans had made a comedy about killing Obama, I don't think
they'd be hell to pay.
We wouldn't be too pleased.
They should have, like in The Dictator, the Sacha Baron Cohen film, have a fictional leader from a fictional place.
Well, but the other thing, let me bring this up here. If you remember a few years back, maybe 8 years ago, there was a movie from Great Britain called Assassination of a President, the one about if they killed George W. Bush. Do you remember this movie?
That was a pro-Bush kind of film.
Sort of, kind of.
But hold on a second, though. There was Team America World Police.
That's true.
Right? There was South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. And that didn't have the reaction
Different when it's cartoons,
this
apparently,
film.
or
And those films were probably much more, let's say, tawdry than this story was.
That is true. Well,
that I didn't see because I'm not special.
Sony took a gamble. And our next film is The Gambler, starring Mark Wahlberg as a college professor with a serious gambling problem who's hell-bent on his own self-destruction.
You got me feeling lucky. I'm putting everything on black.
Red's been coming up all night.
You want me to pay you now?
Maybe I enjoy watching the show.
19 red.
What's wrong with you? You got brain damage?
All right. First of all, to me, John Goodman, he did in Flight, every scene he was in, he was riveting. He owned it.
He's got very inspiring casting choice.
He's a great dialogue, and Michael K. Williams, I thought, killed it. Mark Wahlberg, all right, he's solid.
We were disagreeing on this, but I thought,
so
as a professor, I felt that he was compelling to watch. Not believable as a professor.
I totally disagree.
Excuse me, if he was your professor, you'd be compelled. Is that what you're saying?
Because he was, the classroom sequences, the things that he said, in his lectures, I thought those scenes were very appealing.
Well, scenes like that, those are when the writer gets to say what they want to say. Those are scenes.
Bill Moynihan, who wrote this.
Bill Moynihan, who wrote this.
You can tell he enjoyed himself. But I felt a little bit let down because he also wrote The Departed, another remake, as this film is. And that, I think, is one of the best screenplays ever written, in my opinion. And you disagree with me. So I was really let down by this film. I had high expectations.
Well, I have to say, I went in with low expectations. And I was surprised. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I really loved the soundtrack.
Oh, well, that was
soundtrack
great.
is very
good. And the supporting characters, pretty much, for for me, made this
Yes,
film.
Jessica Lange, I thought she was great.
The film is very stylish. I didn't see the '74 film written by Toback. I didn't read Dostoevsky's book, about the gambler. But the problem with this film is Mark Wahlberg, because I didn't buy him one bit. It's counting down over the week, and there's so many great supporting character roles that when I see Brie Larson, who's his student, slash the nighttime hostess who kind of like wants him, I'm like, she's a much better actress. Give her something better to do.
She was your professor. You'd find her compelling. Is that okay?
More than compelling.
Okay.
But I feel that once again, Mark Wahlberg is very skilled with, getting great actors around him and a good story. And he's normally the guy that's lifting the heavyweight and not too good at it. And this is another prime
So
example.
even though he lost 60 pounds, you don't think he's transformed a little bit?
He can lose weight, but I'm not sure he can act. Let's put it that way.
Ooh, he could lose weight, but he may not be able to gain acting ability. Is that what you're saying?
Not as far as I've seen.
Ooh.
I've seen every one of his movies.
All right, Julian, you need to come out of your shell and tell us what you think, and we'll be back.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
So you think there's some kind of grand plan? Why do we live when the others didn't? I got good news and bad news. You are enemies of Japan. You will be treated accordingly.
Welcome, sort of.
We have an Olympic athlete in all count. Look at me. You're nothing.
In Unbroken, Oscar winner Angelina Jolie directs the story of POW Louis Zamperini, who, after a near-fatal plane crash in World War II, spent 47 days in a raft before being captured by the Japanese Navy. Welcome back to Rise on Screen. Again, my critics are still Justine Browning and Julian Roman. Now, I have to say, I was surprised. I thought that this movie was very good. I think you mentioned this yourself. I think Angelina Jolie shows great promise as a director. Yes. I got really caught up in the story.
I didn't think it was great or even that good. I thought it was good. Jolie has proven that she's very good in directing actors. There's a lot of suffering that goes on in this film, and the actor Jack O'Connell does a great job. But I mean, Zamperini's story is so epic and unbelievable. I was really waiting to be blown away by this epic nature of the film, and I guess never felt that.
Really?
Well, you see, now I have to disagree with you. I didn't feel that this was an epic. I felt that this was a story, a small story, that had much larger implications, because it's really a small amount of characters. We do visit some large sets, and there's some large vistas, and we're at the Olympic Games, we're in these large POW camps, but it's really about this one man and the struggle he went through.
Well, it is, but here's my issue with that, right? That's what you spoke about. You spoke about the Olympics. The guy met Hitler, which is not in the film. Right, being captured by the Japanese, his youth problems, being an Olympic racer. He had a very, very full life and saw all these incredible things, and he suffers, and you really see that. But there are other films like this where you feel the magnitude of history and what he's seeing, and I feel that Jolie was going for it. The cinematography done by Roger Deakins is pretty good, but somehow the mood doesn't encompass an epic feeling to it.
Now, what did you think?
I don't know. From the first frame on, I thought there was such a great attention to detail that it's somehow telling this.
It's a small story.
I mean, the plane crash and them being on the raft, and if you're not familiar with the book or the real story, you are just on the edge of your seat this whole film, not knowing what's going to happen.
And I think that was the point. I think it's a choice, leaving out him meeting Hitler, things like that.
I thought that was a mistake, a big mistake.
I disagree with you. I think that would have taken away from what made this such a personal story and such a personal story of survival.
The violence is felt very strongly here, I think. Like in Selma, I mean, you are just horrified the whole film.
Well, that's Jolie's knack. I mean, the first film she did, Blood and Honey, you see the suffering that the character faces, and in this film, and I'll say it again, Jack O'Connell is very, very good, and might get an Oscar nomination for it. But even though I liked the film and would definitely recommend it, it could have been better.
Well, I think it had some relation, especially in the beginning, where we see something that's happening in the war, and then we flash through his childhood to our next film, which is American Sniper, and it's our final film of 2014. It stars Bradley Cooper as a U.S. Navy SEAL, Chris Kyle, whose pinpoint marksmanship in Iraq saves countless lives, but makes him a target behind enemy lines.
I'll tell you something, these Marines keep rushing in like they're doing, they're gonna have their asses shot off.
Oh, the Marines. They don't get the training we do. Half these guys were civilians 6 months ago.
Well, let's coach him up. I'll show them how team guys do it. I'll lead the unit on the street.
No, we can't do that. We need you on Overwatch.
Come on, if I'm on the street, Mark,
Look, house to house is the deadliest job here, man. You got some sort of savior complex?
I just want to get the bad guys, but if I can't see them, I can't shoot them.
Look, all these guys, they know your name. They feel invincible with you up there.
They're not.
They are if they think they are.
This is a movie that, again, I was surprised because Clint Eastwood, I love Clint Eastwood, okay? I love him as an actor. I like him a lot as a director, but he can be hit or miss. And I thought that this was a pretty damn solid movie. He's not one for style. Like if a Ridley Scott had done this, it would have been very stylized. We'd have slow motion sequences and music swelling up. You know, Clint Eastwood is a much more subdued director. And I thought that it pretty much worked for this story. What did you think, Justine?
Well, I think the opening scene is so compelling, you know, where he has to make the decision whether or not to take the shot. But I don't know that the rest of the film really presents you with the complex that he had to face on a daily basis.
You mean the
Right?
non-talkative Bradley Cooper didn't work for you?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen what Catherine Bigelow, dare I say it, would have done with something like this. Because really, the end where you see the battle he faces at home, which I think is a huge thing for veterans, you know, today and in the past, Catherine Bigelow is amazing at exploring that side of it, and I feel like that was tacked on. I would have liked to have gotten to know this person more.
Well, I do think that that's a flaw in the film. You really, even though they do similar, like I said, that they do in the Angelina Jolie film, where we see this pivotal moment in the war, and we flash back to his childhood, and it takes us all the way up to the point, so we have enough of caring about him to really be with him in that moment. And I thought that was work. I do agree. I thought the first act was probably the strongest act. And I thought as he went on, now you kind of felt that it didn't move you?
I have mixed feelings about this film because what Eastwood does is, I mean, the scenes where he has like the children he has to shoot and the women he has to shoot because, you know, they're attacking American soldiers and you've got to blow the kid away because he has the grenade and he's running towards the kid as a suicide bomber. Those are harrowing because you really as an audience go like, wow, this is what the life and death decision is, but we don't get to know Chris Kyle. We see brief glimpse of his life and everything we see of his wife is she's bawling on the phone with him while he's in Iraq. Now, I actually know Chris Kyle's story, and he is obviously the greatest American sniper who's lived. The man had a lot of feeling, a lot of depth to him, and the movie doesn't really go into that. It's very rote. It goes through his 4 tours, you know, his wife and his family, but you feel like there was so much emotion missing from him that we could have seen that could have been explored.
Well, I can't say I disagree. I think the style worked, and I would blame that more on the script because I felt that, you know, there's a lot going on with him, but we never know what it is. We just know it's beneath the surface. And I think that Bradley Cooper, did, you know, he tried pretty hard. I thought he did a really solid job, and I think he's a good actor.
He bulked up, you know, he was chewing his jaw.
Yes, he was.
But I mean, just for instance, the one scene where he's getting the blood pressure taken, you know, and you see how incredibly high his blood pressure is, and that scene was just kind of glossed over afterwards. That makes sense, you know, this guy is having major inner turmoil. Let him express it in some way. He must have spoken to somebody. He must have said something, but you really only see him as one kind of character.
All right, so would you recommend?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. That's a tough one. Yes, because I think it's an important story. This man's life is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, this man's life definitely needs to be seen.
Well, thank you both for being here, and I hope to have you on again in the coming year. I've enjoyed reviewing films with you. And thanks for watching at home or wherever you are. I hope you had a great holiday, and we'll see you next year to talk more movies here on Arise on Screen.